Auburn was picked to finish 10th by the media last media days. Where will the Tigers begin this preseason? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for giving us a listen today. Joining me, as he will every single week, is my good friend, Thrift Baringer, owner and host over at Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Thrift, the Auburn Tigers are firmly into the offseason here. It was an uneventful spring for Auburn that culminated in kind of like a boring A-Day. Wasn't a whole lot going on. You and I both covered it. It was a practice. It was a practice.
Yeah.
But Media Days is coming. It's in Atlanta this year. We will both be there as well, too. So we'll both be voting in the media poll. You and I have to cast a vote for Auburn. Last year, they were picked to finish 10th in the league, and that is in the inaugural 16-team league with Oklahoma and Texas joining the conference. It's year 2 of 16 teams in the league. I want to start today with where we see the Tigers finishing. Perception versus reality, my friend. They don't always line up, but I think they should be projected a little higher than 10th in the league. They're starting to get some national love from a lot of the pundits. I'm looking around at polls, and Auburn is firmly in the top 15 in a lot of people's polls.
Yeah, they are. And that's where I'm saying in the SEC, that's a middle of the pack team. I would feel like for most people, they're going to vote for them this upcoming year, which, by the way, cannot wait. We'll be on Radio Row for the first time in my career for the Sports Vision Morning Show coming up, man. I've gone to many SEC media days over the last – I've actually gone to, other than Dallas, the last 4. So I'm excited to be back in Atlanta doing Radio Row. Should be a lot of fun. But, Mike, these preseason things, man, no one really puts a lot of stock into it, even though I like doing the rankings. I'm a rankings guy. If you're asking me realistic expectations, I'm the guy, Mike, that told you they were going 9-3 last year. Peyton Thorne was going to break all these stats, and obviously I was wrong on that. So if I was high on them last year, why would I not be high on them this year with everything they've done this past offseason?
Yeah, look, I get it. I don't think your optimism was misplaced last year. I think Auburn had more talent to finish better than they did. I didn't think that, based on where they were voted last year, I thought 10th was about right. Like you said, I mean, so many SEC teams rated in the top 25 at the beginning of every season. It's not unheard of for a middle of the pack SEC team to still be a top 25 overall team, in a lot of these polls. But, the competition that you have to deal with is in conference. And, when deciding where you think Auburn ranks, one has to look at the schedule. Now, they kick off with Baylor, that first game. You got a couple cupcakes. And then you got Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Georgia to kick off that SEC schedule. I think Auburn has to finish at least 4-2 coming out of that first 6-game stretch. And, where they get voted, I think will tell a lot about how media and experts and analysts feel like they're going to finish that first 6-game stretch. When you look at the schedule, where do you see for Auburn in those first 6 games?
I remember talking with you and Ike about 2 months ago about when the schedule first initially came out. What were some of the wins? Where do we see them midway through the season? Listen, I'm going to be honest with you, man. I think they need to start the season 3-0. They cannot lose to Baylor. You have to go on the road to Oklahoma. They're going to be much improved.
Yep.
A&M, look what they did in year 1. What do you think they're going to do in year 2? And then you still got Georgia and Alabama, albeit at home. So those are 4 games I feel like are toss-ups. Arkansas, Missouri. Arkansas also on the road, but I don't know how to feel about Arkansas. But Missouri at home should be a win. Kentucky at home should be a win. I know Diego Pavia is trying to come back for Vanderbilt, but that should be a win. The 4 toss-up games, in my opinion, are Georgia and Alabama at home, and then Oklahoma and Texas A&M on the road. So, with that being said, if you could go 2-2 in that stretch, 6-0 in the other, 8-0 in the other stretch, that's a 10-2, 9-3 type season. That is where I would want Auburn to be heading into this year. If you're Hugh Freeze, I feel like 8-4 is the worst you need to be. I would not be happy with 7-5, man. I wouldn't. I don't think that's the progression you want to be in year number 3 in the Hugh Freeze era.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, for our listeners on podcast, I want to break this down. You got Baylor August 29th. Then you have Ball State September 6th. South Alabama on September 13th. Then you get into SEC play. Oklahoma, September 27th. Texas A&M on September 27th. I'm sorry. I want to say that again. September 20th, you're at Oklahoma. September 27th, you're at Texas A&M. You've got a bye week. And then Georgia, October 11th, to round out the first 6 games. The next 5 games, we'll talk about that here in a second, I think are really winnable. But 4-2 coming out of that stretch, which I think includes starting 3-0 and then getting one of your first 3 SEC games. That shouldn't be an impossible task for this team under Hugh Freeze in his 3rd year.
No, I don't think that's an impossible task. I'm in complete agreement with you, Mike, when looking at their schedule. And I think you're right. 4-2, 5-1, and your only loss, let's say, is to a Georgia, and that means you would have 2 wins on the road in the SEC. Now you're talking about maybe making the playoff, because remember, a 9-win team made the playoff last year. 10 wins could make the playoffs, but you got to get in the top 12. So 5-1, 4-2, you still have everything you want in place with how the playoffs are with the 12 teams. So 4-2 the worst, 5-1. I think you have to beat one of Alabama or Georgia too. I don't think you can go 0-2 against them either, Mike. In your opinion, would you rather go 9-3 and have a win against Auburn, Georgia and Alabama, or would you rather go 10-2 and both your losses be to your rival? What would you rather have if you had to pick one of those scenarios?
Yeah, I think I'm taking 10-2 with both the losses being to my rivals, because that still has you in a playoff. That has you in a 12-team playoff. Yeah, I don't know how else to say that, man. Like, at the end of the day, Auburn is making the playoff in that scenario, and then you possibly, one of those teams you're probably going to have to face again in the playoff if you advance. So, we saw it last year. There were a lot of teams that had an opportunity from the SEC to make the playoff, and they blew it down the stretch. Missouri had their destiny in their hands, Thrift. South Carolina went on an epic run at the end of the season to be in playoff contention at the end of the season, but ultimately they finished with 9 wins. Great season for them. I think that's where Auburn has to be this year. I think that you need to be what South Carolina was last year. To show that this program is headed the right direction under Hugh Freeze.
I agree with you, man. And if you go back to last year, obviously not the year you want, you go 5-7, but there was not one game in which we were totally outmatched other than the Georgia game. The Georgia game was the only one where we went into that, Mike, thinking that we had no chance. Aside from that, every other game, you felt like Auburn was playing up to their competition or sometimes playing down to their competition, but they were in almost every game. So it made me feel like that we're not that far behind from being either a 10-2 top 4 team in the SEC or being that bottom 4 team like we saw last year. And if we believe, which I think we both do, that after in the recruiting cycle, from the transfer portal, from the guys that are coming in from high school, that the influx of talent and the quarterback position being upgraded, that this has to be an 8 or 9 win team. It has to be. Or if not, when are we going to start wondering, is this Hugh Freeze thing going to work out? Because I am not buying 7-5. It's moving the right direction. I get it's 2 more wins than last year, and you obviously are winning more games, but I got to see more than that, man. And that's why I said that 8 win should be the minimum for this team. Am I being too harsh?
Yeah, no, and year-over-year improvement, should be looked at from a standpoint of whether you hit what your floor should have been last year. 5-7 was not your floor. Like, you effectively lowered the floor. The 7 wins should have been the bottom for this team last year. Now, in talking about whether they can hit that, I want to talk about that before we get to the break. I want to talk about that next 6-game stretch, Thrift. After Georgia, you get Missouri at home. You're on the road at Arkansas. You get Kentucky at home. You're on the road at Vanderbilt, and then you get Mercer before the Iron Bowl. That 5-game stretch, Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer, every single one of those games is winnable. As we sit here right now, Auburn has a chance to go on a 5-game winning streak if they have it together headed into the Iron Bowl. So I want to paint the picture for you again. You start that first 6-game stretch 4-2. You win your next 5. You are a 9-win team going into the Iron Bowl with a chance to beat Alabama in Kalen DeBoer's second year and make the college football playoff. So these may seem like lofty goals for Auburn based on a team that did not make a bowl game last year. But I want to remind fans that, Auburn's best seasons over the last 20 years have come off the back of disappointing seasons the year before.
Yeah.
2003, Auburn started the year ranked in the top 6 in the country. And they flopped mightily. And they tried to oust Tuberville, and we had Jetgate, and they didn't fire him. And he came back, and they won every single game the next year. 2010 came off the back of a pretty mediocre campaign in 2009.
Yeah.
2013 came off of the back of the worst season we've ever seen from Auburn in 50 years at the time. 3-9 campaign the year before. And they went all the way to the BCS national title game and lost it in the last 3 seconds. I think if you're Auburn, last year's results were not indicative of the talent level of your team. And so when we talk about where they can go with this, you can't just look and say, well, 5-7 to 10-2 is a big jump. Oh, yeah, of course it's going to seem like a big jump based on the record, but they had better than 5-7 talent last year, Thrift. So it's not really that big of a jump.
No, it would not be. And that's why when in 2012, that was not a 3-9 team. That team had plenty of 5 stars. That's why it was not, I'm not saying it was super easy, but that's why you saw Gus Malzahn in year 1, the very next season, take his team to the national championship because the talent was already there. It wasn't a 3-9 team because it would have been almost unheard of to be able to turn around like they did with literally no talent. Now, I will tell you this. Every team that you just made mention, Mike, had a quarterback that came back the next year with something to prove. Think about Jason Campbell. Remember, people were throwing him out, the baby out with the bathwater. They said he was done. He couldn't play anymore. Let Brandon Cox be the starter. Don't even get me started on Brandon Cox in his career. Then Cam Newton. Remember what happened at Florida. Many people said he'll never get another opportunity. Dominates JUCO, but still an unknown. And then think about 2013. Nick Marshall kicked off with Georgia. These guys had those chip on their shoulders. Maybe Jackson Arnold is going to be that guy. Coming with a chip on his shoulder, felt like he was an afterthought at Oklahoma. They didn't give him enough time to grow as a quarterback.
That's
so
a good point.
I'm seeing the similarities, man. But the biggest thing is that quarterback position. It has to pan out. If not, we're talking Auburn back to where they were in the past 5 seasons, and we don't want that anymore, man.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like I said, the quarterback definitely is the thing that will have Hugh Freeze either on or off the hot seat in 2025, which leads us to our next segment. What is it going to take for Hugh Freeze to put the hot seat talk to rest? I'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors. This segment of the War Report is brought to you by our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR and use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights. Code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. The spring is here. The summer is on the way, and you want to be outside making memories with the family around a Golden's Cast Iron grill, or getting your lift on with some Golden's Cast Iron weights. Work out, grill out, chill out with our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Again, visit the URL and make sure you use that code to get your discount on your Golden's Cast Iron products. Also, the segment is brought to you by our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code REPORT to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Boss getting on your nerves? Don't slap them. Visit the Rogue Shop. Girl getting on your nerves? Get rid of her and go to the Rogue Shop. Rogueshop.com, helping us get through today. Also, our friends at the Vibe Vaults. If you're in the Phoenix City, Columbus area, or if you don't mind making the drive down from Auburn, Opelika, visit the Vibe Vault to make sure you stay fresh for the weekend. Not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Sweet Eye in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's on Highway 431, right across the street from Chattahoochee Valley Community College, next to the Renfro's supermarket and right next to Marco's Pizza. Again, the Vibe Vault, helping you stay fresh for the weekend. My guy Steve Watkins up there serving up some straight edge ups over there, Thrift. That's where I go right now. So if you're looking and you're like, hey, Mike just lined up.
Yeah,
That's
fresh, man.
That's our friends over there at the Vibe Vault. Guys, if you're listening to this on podcast or if you're watching YouTube on delay, do us a favor. If you want to support the content we're doing, hit that super thanks button in the comment section. Show us some love there. He can help keep the work that we're doing here going. Let's jump back in here, Thrift. Look, expectations are going to be high. We talked about that schedule. I want to run down it one more time. Baylor, Ball State, South Alabama, at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M, Georgia at home to round out the first half of that schedule. You've got Missouri, you're coming to the Plains. You're at Arkansas, and you got Kentucky coming to the Plains as well. You're at Vanderbilt. You have a bye week, a second bye week between Vanderbilt and Mercer, and then you finish obviously with Alabama in the Iron Bowl at home. This is the easiest schedule we've seen in 20 years. I cannot say that I've seen an easier schedule for an SEC team. The elimination of divisions has opened the door for Auburn to get into this Georgia-like scheduling rotation, right? We see Georgia's loaded with talent, but good God, they've had some easy schedules compared to their SEC counterparts over the years. This is a dream for you in year 3, I think, if you're Hugh Freeze, to get this schedule. And if he cannot navigate this to 8 wins, I think at 7 wins, the seat is hot. I don't think he's fired, but the seat is hot headed into year 4. Anything less than 7, I think a coaching change has to be on the table. Talk to me here. What result do you think gets Hugh Freeze off the hot seat completely? What's the minimum to get him off the hot seat completely? Which one do you think it's totally hot going into year 4? And what gets him fired?
I think totally hot is what you just said is 7-5. Anything less than that, he's getting fired. I think minimum 8 wins this year. In my opinion, I really want to go a step further and say minimum 9, but I'm not going to do that to Hugh. I'm going to keep realistic expectations so there's not too much pressure on him, so he can actually come through and get Auburn football back to where it is. And you mentioned about Georgia. I just want to go back 2017 when Florida was trash, Tennessee was trash, South Carolina was trash. They literally, the SEC East was so bad. Remember how weak because of the divisions, how weak their schedules are. Now, no more of that. Now you have to play elite teams. And even with this schedule being easier than it has been in the past, you still got to play at Oklahoma. You still got to play Alabama and Georgia at home. But that shows you how tough the SEC is by saying this is one of the easier schedules that any of the SEC teams have. I'll tell you this, Mike. If you ask me what the most important game of the season is, I think it's the Baylor game. Because if you lose that Baylor game, what you've told me, Mike, is that 3-game stretch with A&M, with Georgia and Oklahoma, you're thinking maybe 1-2 during that stretch. Well, if you lose to Baylor, that's 3-3 coming out of it. 3-3, what are you really playing for? You feel like you got to win out to make the playoffs. Are you starting to lose the locker room? Those games at Arkansas start looking more and more losable, and then you're thinking about a season that could be washed. So I think you have to start 3-0. That has to happen. And you have to go into Baylor, and I think you need to make a statement to everyone across the country. And this is not a Baylor team like it was back in 2021 and Coach Aranda's second season, which they won 12 games and were close to making the playoffs. This team has been an afterthought the last couple of years. I think you can go into Waco and win that game, Mike. Do you feel like Baylor is the most important one, or would you put the A&M and Oklahoma, Georgia stretch a little bit more important, man?
The more I think about it, the more I think there is a lot of pressure on that opening game. You lose that one, and the pressure starts to ramp up big time. Now, If you're Auburn, you've got to go into that game knowing who you are. And what I mean is, I think Auburn has to firmly have their offensive identity headed into that game. So whatever this is, they've got to have it figured out in fall camp. You got
Mhm.
to know what you're doing with Jackson Arnold. Uh, we talked to Peyton Thorne the last couple of years about how much he had to run the ball the 2 years that he quarterbacked on the Plains, and he hated it, man. He hated that he had to run as much as he did. He had 100
Right.
plus carries both years. I Jackson Arnold is an athletic guy, but I know that he does not want to run the ball that much. So you've got a receiver core that should be one of the best in the nation. Hugh Freeze has stacked the deck around the quarterback to help raise the floor for his QBs and say, look, at worst, with Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, Eric Singleton, Horatio Fields, and Malcolm Simmons, you should be a 3,000-yard passer. And if Jackson Arnold can do that, I think you beat Baylor. And then you start the season 3-0. So you get 2 more games to work out the kinks. And there's a really low floor for those first 3 games. I think you just got to win one of them, Thrift. I
Yeah.
think you got to win the first 3 and win one of your first 3 SEC games, and you have a chance to go on a special run after that. Now, anything over that and is extra credit. It's a bonus that gives you some leeway to maybe slip up in that second half. But I really believe that stretch after the Georgia game is what's going to define this season. They've got to go. Auburn has to be able to go on a 4 or 5 game winning streak in that stretch, headed into the Iron Bowl. And then you got to beat Kalen DeBoer, man. You got to beat Kalen DeBoer. This
Yeah.
guy is not Nick Saban. You have to reset the conversation versus Alabama. You started it in recruiting when Hugh Freeze came in and said you will no longer get your pick of players out of this state now that Nick Saban is not here. And you've done a great job of that. Now you have to take all those guys that you stole from them, and you've got to put a product on the field that can take these guys down, man. Auburn has to take back the Iron Bowl this year. It has been a lopsided affair year in and year out, with Auburn winning in miracles here and there. Saban's gone, man. This is the year that you take back the Iron Bowl, and I think in a year where Auburn wins the Iron Bowl, if it's 2025, you're going to see the Tigers make the playoff.
Mike, if you look at the history of Auburn, and when I was younger, I really went off trends in the history to kind of decide where, and more so than like the recruiting and everything else, I like going off the history and the trends of the program. If you just go back to 1990, when's the last time Auburn had 4 consecutive years? Actually, really 5 if you want to count the 2020 COVID year. 5 years since the last time we had an 8-win season. If you just go to 2000, no more than 2 seasons, then we would have another 8-win year. I can't believe that what we're going through right now with the Auburn football program. It's something that for the younger generation, they've never experienced this. They don't understand that Auburn perennially, maybe not as Alabama or Georgia, but you knew every couple of years, there were going to be a team that went 8, 9, 10 wins, was going to be right there in the SEC mix. Heck, even Terry Bowden went undefeated and took them to an SEC championship in 97. This stretch that we are on from 2020 until now is really unprecedented for the Auburn football program in the last 40 seasons. I feel like it's got to end sometime, man. There's no way this continues on, and we are becoming what Tennessee was from 2008 when they fired Philip Fulmer until they got Josh Heupel. Because remember how bad that era was, man. When they were the champions of life. Remember that?
Yeah, when they moved on from Fulmer, boy, it went downhill for Tennessee for a while. Look, at the end of the day, you made this hire in Hugh Freeze, and you bet that he would be able to be the recruiter that he was when he was at Ole Miss, and that with the resources that you have now, and the support, that he would exceed what he was able to do at Ole Miss.
Right
now, he took down Saban twice as the head coach of Ole Miss, and that's a special club, Thrift. They should have jackets and special Dakota rings for "I beat Nick Saban." But here there's no more Nick Saban. I'm not sure that college football has a Nick Saban right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that's kind of a bold statement. There's some good coaches out there. Shout out to Ron Day. He finally got his championship.
Kirby Smart.
Dabo had a good run there. While Saban was here, he beat Nick a couple times, but ultimately, I don't know that there is a Nick Saban here. And if you're Auburn, you just got to get your slice of the pie, man. That's it, right? You have every resource has been given to this program to get there.
Yeah.
And now it's time to see the fruits of that tree. And if they can't do it this year, you don't have to win a championship next year. We bugged a lot on this segment, but I don't want anybody to hear that we expect Auburn to go, to win the SEC next year. You don't have to win the SEC to be part of the conversation anymore, right? Like the fourth best team in the SEC, if they've got 10 wins, you're making the college football playoff easily.
Right.
And that's going to be good enough to help bolster your recruiting even more and prove to fans why this program is headed the right direction, because you need them to continue to show up. And make no mistake, in light of the failures of this program over the last 2 years, they have shown up. Fans have not quit on the program, Thrift. Games have been packed. I was remarking to somebody on Twitter the other day about that Texas A&M game last year where they rushed the field for win number 5. Their last win of the season, but they rushed the field for that. I could not get back to the press room from midfield after that one. So the enthusiasm is still there from fans. It's just time for Hugh Freeze to show them why that enthusiasm is not misplaced. My enthusiasm is never misplaced when Thrift Baringer is on the scene. I want to thank you for joining me today, my friend. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, man, go to Georgia Alabama Sports Live on YouTube and on Facebook. We talk all things SEC, plus where we're located in the Chattahoochee Valley area, which is Columbus, Phoenix City, right on the border of Georgia and Alabama. We cover all things high school, college, pro, and then also, of course, the Sports Visions Morning Show with me and DJ Jones. Sports Visions 92.1 FM, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. You can listen to us every single weekday morning. Mike, it's always a pleasure. And maybe we can talk some Auburn basketball in the near future, because you talk about something that's going to fire me up. Nothing fires me up more than Bruce Pearl and those Auburn Tigers basketball team, man.
Yeah, plenty to talk about here coming with the basketball team. Never a dull moment over there on the hardwood. Guys, that's it. I want to thank Thrift Baringer for joining me today. As always, subscribe to the channel and hit that super thanks in the comments after the video. We appreciate you guys for helping support our work. That's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. Signing off, and as always, Warriors.